Welcome into another episode of Home Field Advantage. Hope you're all having a great finish to 2024 or start of 2025, wherever you may be listening or watching across our great country or our great land. My name is Will Highland. It is December 31st, 2024, my last episode of 2024 and my last episode of season 6. This is Home Field Advantage. I am happy to conclude season 6. I appreciate all of your support as we do so. It's been not my best year in terms of providing consistent content, but I appreciate every single one of you here who continue to make this podcast what it is. I would have liked to have recorded something earlier in the week here in between Christmas and New Year's Day. But unfortunately, I came down with a cold, and my whole household did as well. So you can probably still tell by my voice that it wasn't necessarily the most active week here in the beautiful state of Maine where I am. Where I want to spend today's episode is doing what I think is going to be a new tradition on the show. 6 years in, we continue to do new traditions each and every time. And I'm happy and grateful that you all, as the listeners, continue to listen, even though we change up the format so often. All right, here's what I want to do. A year ago, I asked for sports predictions um, that I was going to read on. I believe it was going to be. I think it was going to read on January 2nd or 3rd of last year. I was sick to begin this year as well. Sorry, let me start over. I asked for sports predictions basically a year ago on New Year's Eve for 2024. I was going to read them on January 2nd, 2024. Then I was sick. So I ended up reading them on, I believe, January 5th or 6th. And we don't know, or we didn't know at the time, if they were going to pan out. Well, now we do know what happened in sports in 2024. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to read those again and see who was right, who was wrong, and where we all came out when the dust settled. And then next week, I'll ask you guys and we'll do predictions for 2025. Um, and then at the end of the episode, a I'm going to take a segment from who I believe is the best sports opinionist in the world, and that is Colin Cowherd. I know that might be a hot take of its own, but I think Colin Cowherd is the best at what he does. And I'm going to take a page out of his playbook and tell you where Will was right and where Will was wrong in 2024. And I'm going to give two examples of each. All right. Here is the first prediction we had for 2024. So I'm going to pick on everyone else first before I pick on myself. So Matt said the Patriots draft a defensive lineman with their pick in the first round. I think he said second pick overall. We know the Patriots ended up drafting third. That's not true. They drafted Drake May. Not sure if that was sarcasm or not, but uh, we're one loss for the group here for the home field advantage nation. We're 0-1 on picks. Cam said the Los Angeles Dodgers will not win the NL West. Um, I think they did, and not only did they win the NL West, they won the World Series. So that's a miss. 0-2. Michael says the Patriots signed Russell Wilson after he's cut. Then they draft Marvin Harrison Jr. and an offensive line and have a winning record. Well, uh, Russell Wilson went to the Steelers. Marvin Harrison Jr. went to the Cardinals. I can assure you there's no beast offensive line, and they very much do not have a winning record. So, unfortunately for our pal Michael, we're now 0-3 in home field advantage nation. Glenn says the Mets will make the playoffs. There we go. The Mets did make the playoffs, and they did more than that. They went to the National League Championship Series, and I believe we're a game or two away from the World Series, despite running into that same Dodger team that was a buzzsaw. So we're 1 for 4 here. Rory says Vaughn Grissom breaks out at second base for the Red Sox. Lucas Giolito has a bounce back season, and the Red Sox return to their 2021 form. Oh boy. I think I'm going to treat this as one take. Otherwise, we'd be in serious trouble. Vaughn Grissom is a disaster. Lucas Giolito was out for the season, and the Red Sox very much did not return to their 2021 form, and in fact missed the playoffs for the third straight year. Jack says the B's and C's will win the Cup and the NBA Finals. The Red Sox will finish in last again, and the Pats draft Drake May and keep Bill. All right, Jack, there's a ton to unpack here because you gave us a lot of takes, and some of them came true and some of them did not. All right, so heading into this, we're 1 for 5. Although if I'm gonna treat Jack's the same way I treat Rory's, then I suppose, or the same, then I suppose I gotta treat it as one take, but I don't want to. So for that, I'm going to say we're now 1 for 7, because Rory had 3 takes and none of them were right. So we're 1 for 7. Now Jack says the B's and C's will win the NBA Finals and Stanley Cup. So that's half right. So we're gonna call that a half. So now we're 1.5 out of 8 because the Celtics did win the NBA Finals. In fact, they had one of the best postseasons I have ever seen. The Red Sox did finish in last again, right? Or were they in third? No, they were in third or fourth. I think the Rays were last. Hold on. AL East standings 2024. I don't know why my Trump voice just came out there. AL East standings 2024. All right. The Red Sox were in third. All right, so that's a loss there. So we're 1.5 out of 9. The Patriots did draft Drake May. Check. All right, so that's 2. And keep Bill. So we're gonna call that 2 out of 10 score overall. Mark says Red Sox miss the playoffs. Orioles win the pennant. All right, well, that was all right. So I'm 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 trying to do this right. I think if we're gonna treat Rory and Jack with multiple takes, we got to do the same for Mark. And we didn't really do it for Michael either. All right, so for Mark, Red Sox missed the playoffs, Orioles win the pennant. All right, Mark, Red Sox did miss the playoffs, so that's a half correct take. Or is that a full correct take? He put a comma. There's no and. Jack said the Pats draft Drake May and keep Bill, therefore he was only half right. Mark put a comma in there. The Red Sox missed the playoffs. Yes. Okay, now we're 3 out of 11. The Orioles win the pennant. No, they did not. Now we're 3 out of 12. Okay, but I told Michael earlier when he said that the Pats were going to sign Russell Wilson, draft Marvin Harrison, and get a beast offensive line. I treat that as one take. We're actually going to treat that as 3 takes, which means we're now 3 for 14. So that's ironic considering the Patriots are probably going to finish their season 3 and 14. I did not plan that, but that's where we're at. So we can point out here that Home Field Advantage Nation didn't have a great year. The only one who had correct takes was Mark said the Red Sox are going to miss the playoffs. That was a full correct take. Jack had 2 half correct takes that the Pats were going to draft Drake May and that the Celtics were going to win the NBA title. All right, that gives us 2 full correct takes. And then Glenn was the only one who basically came 100% true when he said the Mets will make the playoffs. They did. All right, so that's our 3 takes that were somewhat right. The worst take overall and I hate to pick on my fans. I love my fans. You know, all 15 of you. I'm just kidding. The 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 worst take was probably that the from Cam, and I can pick on Cam because not only is he a fan, he's also a co-host of the show sometimes. And Cam said the Los Angeles Dodgers will not win the NL West. Not only did that not happen, as I said, they won the World Series. So that might be the worst take. I mean, the Vaughn Grissom breaks out at second base from Rory. Love you, man. That's a tough take. I mean, Vaughn Grissom, yikes. All right, so that's where our squad was right and wrong in 2024. Now, I'm gonna give you two takes specifically about NFL quarterbacks that I was wrong about, and both of these quarterbacks reside in the NFL in the NFC North. And let me just say, I owe Minnesota Vikings fans an apology. Specifically, those of you who know my take that I thought Sam Darnold was going to be garbage for the Vikings this year. That was my big NFL take heading into the year, is that they were going to finish in last place because of how bad he was. Not only did the Vikings not finish in last place, they have a chance next week to be in the number one overall seed in the NFC. And Sam Darnold, if the NFL did it the way the other leagues do, he would be um, the if they did it the way baseball did it, Sam Darnold would be the MVP of the NFC. So look, he's a little bit lucky because he plays on a great team, better than I gave them credit for, and he has an offensive minded coach who's incredible, and great receivers, and a good tight end. So he does have that going for him. But I'm not afraid to say when I've got pie on my face. And I was wrong about Sam Darnold for this season. Now, what I've always said about Sam Darnold is that the Vikings are going to have to decide, excuse me, they're going to have to decide what their future is. Um, oh, there is a mute button on my mic. I'm just now seeing that. So if I have to cough again, perhaps I'll click on that. I digress. Sam Darnold not only did better than I thought, despite being on a team that is good, he is the reason why they are where they are. Because if he was bad, like I thought he was going to be bad, this team would still probably be better than I thought. They wouldn't be a last place team. But I think the Vikings, if not for Sam Darnold, would probably be like 9-8 if he was like average at best. But he's been pretty good. And so because of that, they're like what, 12-3 or something like that. Or 13-2. I can't remember exactly. Um, they have a chance. They play Detroit next week, and they have a chance to be the number one seed in the in the NFC. And what I have been right about with Sam Darnold is that the Vikings have to figure out, are they going to sign him to a bridge deal? Or is a team like, I don't know, the Titans or the Raiders or the 49ers again, or the Seahawks possibly, or, you know, the Browns or somebody else who's kind of in need of a quarterback, more so those later teams than the earlier ones I mentioned, are they going to do something like what happened to Baker Mayfield? What's crazy to me is that Baker and Darnold were on not only in the same draft class, but they were on the Panthers together a couple of years ago. So the Minnesota Vikings are going to have to make some decisions about what they're going to do with Sam Darnold in the future. Is he somebody that they're going to decide is their bridge to JJ McCarthy? Or is he a guy that maybe had a lightning in the bottle season and maybe Will was right all along? We'll have to find out. But for 2024, I was wrong about Sam Darnold. I was also wrong about Jordan Love in the same division. They played the other day. Look, I don't love Love. I've never said that. I've never said that I haven't believed that. Um, but I didn't think he was going to be as good as he was this year, and I was wrong about that. I was also wrong in thinking that the Green Bay Packers were going to we're going to struggle in an NFC. In fact, this NFC has been so good in 2024 this fall that it's really anyone's conference going into the postseason, and that includes the Packers. That NFC North, you know, Tim Walz was right when he said that he was wrong when he said no, he was right when he said that the election ran through the NFC North and the road to the Super Bowl. And unfortunately for him and his group, the former didn't work out for him. But the governor of Minnesota was not wrong in pointing out that the road to the Super Bowl is going to lead through the NFC North. I just talked about the Vikings. The Lions are right there. And the Packers and Jordan Love, I don't think any team wants to see them coming into their building. If I am the Buccaneers or the Rams, I wouldn't be enthused about the uh, Packers coming into our building in the playoffs. I wouldn't be excited about that. And so I was wrong about Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. Where was I right in 2004? 2004. Oh, geez, in 2004 I was right when I don't know. I'm not even gonna try and make a joke. In 2024, I was right in the NFL when I talked about how the Chiefs were gonna win back to back. I was right. That happened in 2024. I predicted that really way back in 2023. So I was uh, I was right about the Chiefs. I was right about um, the NFC, which we just talked about, being the rising tide lifts all boats. Okay. So the NFC was so good that you looked at those other bubble teams, right? Because the three teams in the North that we've talked about are at the top of the conference. Then you have the Rams, and you have the Eagles, who are right there as well. I don't think the Eagles want to see anybody come in to their stadium, considering their track record in the playoffs the past couple of years outside of the Super Bowl trips. Then you have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and where I was right about the South and the NFC specifically is no team really pulled away from that. They were the most interesting division. The Saints were not very good. The Panthers, of course, were not very good. The Falcons have hung around, and the Buccaneers failed to really push to be with the rest of the NFC cream of the crop. And so I was right about the landscape of the NFL. I was right in some of my broad takes, but when I got too specific in 2024 from an NFL perspective, I was pretty dead wrong. Where else was I right in 2024? Well, I was right back in April when I said the Celtics were going to win the NBA title. That turned out to have happened. Um, and they were not, as I mentioned earlier, with Jack's prediction, they had one of the best postseasons I've ever seen in the NBA. 16-2. They were 16-2. I mean, Celtic fans would freak out. They'd lose one game, and then, I'd tell them, I'd be like, guys, get to the playoffs. Nobody's going to be able to beat you four times in 7 games. Nobody could. Nobody nobody won more than one game against them. They had two sweeps and two gentlemen sweeps. I mean, it was insane. how good they were in the playoffs. So that's where I'm at with the Celtics in the NBA this year too. It's like I'm not ready to make a call on the Celtics in 2025, but I'm trying to think about somebody that could beat them in a 7 game series. As I mentioned the other day on my wish list podcast, I don't envision Celtic fans being satisfied with one championship. I would not be. So I think the Celtics, it's up to them in 2025. Are they going to get back there? And are they going to make noise again in the same fashion? Okay. I want to end with some Pats and Red Sox talk. All right, because there's two particular things that have percolated over the last couple days that I want to touch on. The first is I'll try not to spend too much time on this. The first is with the Sox. Okay. The Sox, I had my take earlier that I believe the Sox should be comfortably in the playoff mix in September. Not on the outside looking in, hoping for, an incredible month. But I want them comfortably in the playoffs and challenging for the division. Okay. And one of the things I'm starting to get a little bit worried about with that take is I think others, and myself included, are starting to overvalue the contributions of some of the young players in 2025. What I mean by that specifically is Roman Anthony was, I believe, just named at the end of the season the number one prospect in baseball, and Christian Campbell was voted the minor league player of the year. Both of those guys are on some people's radar to play significant amounts of time with the big league club this year. Similarly, Marcelo Meyer, who at one point was considered a better prospect than those other two, is barely even being talked about, except for that he might also join this newly formed trio after the departure of Kyle Teel in being contributors at the big league level in 2025. Here's my problem with that. That's a tall order. All right. And it's something that I'm a little scared about because I saw someone tweet out a lineup, and these three guys were all involved in that lineup. Trevor Story was in that lineup as well. Tristan Casas, Willie Abreu, Jarren Duran, and Connor Wong, and of course included as well. And one of the issues I had with that particular graphic is, oh well, try and tell me this lineup is not elite. Okay, I'll tell you that right now. It's not elite. Okay? I think there's been a lot of, and this could be the Twitter funhouse mirror rearing its ugly head. But I think there's been a lot of hype around this Red Sox lineup right now with the thought that they might add a Bregman or a Teoscar Hernandez. Well, they're not adding Teoscar Hernandez. He signed a deal with the Dodgers. Bregman, they might get outbid by the Tigers. Okay? And a 30-something-year-old Alex Bregman, I don't think is going to make or break your lineup from being elite or not elite. So I'm a little worried about this lineup. Devers is going to have to carry a lot of weight again. They're going to need Casas to be healthy this year. They're going to need a lot of things to happen. Now, I like these young players. I think these young players on the Red Sox do have potential. I just don't think we should shoulder them with so much pressure the same way we shouldered Brian Bayo a couple years ago with being an ace. Sometimes you're just not ready yet, right? And I think, people are quick to turn on Chaim Bloom, and I was one of those guys who was okay when the Red Sox fired him. And I like Craig Breslow as a guy, as a former player. I think he'll end up doing a good job as an executive if he's given the chance to actually build a team. But one thing we have to be careful with evaluating this Red Sox young core is that The same way that a lot of Dombrowski's trade pieces and young players that helped win that 2018 World Series were actually Charrington's guys that Charrington drafted. Benintendi, Bradley, Bogarts, Betts, etc. The same can be said with Heim Bloom and this group here, um, that have gone through, the Roman Anthonys of the world and whatnot. So I think Red Sox fans have to be a little bit careful about the Heim Bloom era if they're going to simultaneously talk negatively about that era while also propping up these prospects as being the future. I think the best case scenario for the Red Sox this year would be a 2016 like turnaround where they get a big ace in the offseason like Garrett Crochet or David Price back then, and then they turn the tide on that season because of their young core. If that's true, and you think about that young core that Charrington drafted and Dombrowski fostered, that won a World Series and won three straight AL East crowns, that began in 2016. So if the Red Sox can have something similar in 2025, then I think they're on track for success. All right, Patriots talk here. There's been a lot of chatter about, oh, do we want the number one pick or not? Okay. And regardless of what happens, Pat's Land is going to spend the next 150 days talking about the draft. It's just going to happen. Because we're going to have about 90 days of draft talk straight. Then we're going to have about 2 months of hashing out the draft. And so we're going to have plenty of time to talk about what they should or shouldn't do with whatever pick they end up getting after next week's game against the Bills. What I want to tell you right now is there's a lot of people that are saying, start Joe Milton. We don't want Drake May to get hurt. Blah, blah, blah. All this stuff about we should start Milton so that we lose and so that we ensure the number one pick. Because I'm old enough to remember when the last week of the NFL season, the Patriots were controlling their destiny for a first round bye. Now we're talking about controlling the destiny for the number one overall pick. And what it can tell you is this: the Patriots are much better off if Drake May goes against the Bills, goes against Josh Allen, although he's probably going to get benched, but after the first quarter maybe. He might not even play. But I digress. The Patriots are much better off if Drake May has a game in Foxborough where he throws for 350 yards, 4 touchdowns to guys like Jalen Polk and Javon Baker, maybe a couple to Hunter Henry just for good measure, and he can go into the offseason with a good tape to end the year, and you can build for 2025. And who cares if you're drafting third or fourth or first or second? It really doesn't matter. Okay? I don't think that Shadur Sanders or Travis Hunter is anything that the Patriots should twist themselves into a pretzel over. Okay? They're going to be able to get a tackle, a wide receiver, a edge rusher, something of need with a top 5 pick. Okay? It's going to happen. I don't think they're going to be drafting lower than 5, and I really don't care. This is what loser teams do. I just described when we used to talk about securing a first round bye. Now we're talking about securing the number one pick. You can quickly become a team where that's what you're playing for every year if you get into that cycle. I would be fine if Drake May went out there in week 18, threw for 4 touchdowns against a Bills defense, that wasn't that impressive. Maybe you put Milton in there in the fourth quarter or something, and you just get a win to give the fans something to experience at Gillette. I don't know if you guys watched the game against the Chargers. I know the weather was bad. It looked like a funeral. Okay, the Gillette Stadium experience is entirely reliant on the team on the field. And look, you've got guys like Devon Godshaw going out there and saying, and he's a defensive lineman for the Patriots, going out there and saying, "Oh, I think the fans are spoiled that they were booing us and and chanting that Mayo should be fired." Dude, the play better. I don't know, the Patriots need to go out there and win, and the fans just need to get out of this loser mentality. Just get out of the loser mentality if you're a Patriot fan. It has to end after this year. It has to end. And there's nobody that's going to be a panacea for the future of this team. Whether it was Travis Hunter signing T. Higgins, trading for whomever, trading your pick up or down, we're going to have plenty of time to talk about this. The cycle of losing and the culture of losing has to end. It has to end. And winning a meaningless Week 18 game that means nothing to either team against the Bills, people might laugh on Twitter and have a few jokes, and we might talk about it till April about how if we had just lost to the Bills, then we'd be drafting fourth as opposed to first. Or last year, if we hadn't beaten the Steelers or the Broncos, then we would have ended up with Jaden Daniels instead of Drake May. At the end of the day, I think Drake May's an NFL quarterback. I don't think the Patriots should do anything stupid with him either. Nick Wright thinks the Pats should trade him to the Titans so they could go draft Sanders. Or, excuse me, yes, Shadur Sanders. That's stupid. Okay? Don't do anything rash. Don't do anything that will ingrain the cycle of losing into the fan base. Give those people something to cheer about. How many times have they won a home game since Brady left? 10? 8? Like, just do something, because going in losing to the Bills, oh great, we might get the number one pick. We might be able to trade it, for all these picks. All right, and then guess who's making the picks? Elliott Wolf. Did anyone like his draft last year outside of Drake May? No. So I'm just cautioning against this cycle of loserdom that infects NFL teams from top to bottom, and it takes years to get out of. Years. It's been almost 4 years since the Jaguars drafted Trevor Lawrence. They have one playoff win to speak for it. They drafted him number one overall, and they had consistently drafted number one overall year after year after year, and they play half of their home games in another country because nobody gives a damn. If that's the kind of fan base you want to create, the same one that our parents grew up with, where they were threatening to move the team to Hartford and they were drafting at the top of the draft every year, then be my guest. But if you want the Patriots to return to anything resembling what most of us in my listener base grew up with, then you have to end the cycle of losing right now. And it begins with Drake May feeling confident heading into next year, feeling like he is captaining a winning football operation, having Gerard Mayo actually coach a good game for a win, possibly seeing if some of these other young players who's worth keeping in a winning effort. If that's what you want to do, join my group. But if you want to lose and extend the cycle of losing them and just so you can talk and feel good because you've never experienced having the number one pick, ask the Jags, ask the Raiders, ask any of these teams. It's nothing you want to do consistently. The Cardinals drafted Kyler in the 2019 draft at number one overall. He has 0 playoff wins. All right? The 2020 first overall pick is Joe Burrow. Since his Super Bowl berth, what have they done? All right? It's not a recipe for success. Long term. It's not. What is a recipe for success is finding good guys in the third, fourth round, second round, something that Bill was able to do for a lot of the time. That's what the Patriots need to do. They are going to get a good player, whether they're drafting first, third, fifth, seventh, or 10th. They're going to get a good player. What they need to do better is later on in the draft. So that's my only caution. Do you want to extend the cycle of losing, or do you want to end the cycle of losing? I vote for the latter. All right, got that off my chest. Well, plenty of time to talk about what they should do with what happens. Look, if they lose a close game to Buffalo, so be it. But don't go out there and lose for the sake of losing. That's a loser mentality. That's not what Patriot football in the 21st century is. All right. I think that's going to do it for this episode of Home Field Advantage and season six. Again, as I said at the outset, I appreciate every single one of you who listened to the program in 2024. It was a good year. Not my best year, but a year we can all be proud of. I was right about a lot of things. I was wrong about a lot of things. I got good buy-in from our listener base. We got to go through it together as a group. You're in the trust tree. You're part of the family. And in 2025, we'll have a lot more to get to as well about all of these topics and more. Well, I don't know what we're going to talk about in a few days. We'll get there when we get there. But for now, you can like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. That's on Apple, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also subscribe if you like watching our YouTube feed as well. Um, that's Sportland USA Productions on YouTube. And you can follow us on socials at Homefield Pod. Again, I thank each and every one of you for listening to us in 2024. We'll catch you in 2025. But until then, my name is Will Highland, and this has been Home Field Advantage.